Imagine living in a massive, like 400-unit apartment building, and every time someone on your floor flushes the toilet, the plumbing system has to mathematically recalculate the path of the water for the entire complex.
Right, which sounds completely insane.
Totally insane. But conceptually, until very recently, that is exactly how our smart home networks were operating under heavy strain.
Yeah, that's the hidden trap of consumer technology. People treat smart home infrastructure like a collection of isolated toys. You buy a smart bulb, you plug it in, and you expect it to just work.
Right.
But when you scale that up to hundreds or thousands of devices, the physics of how those devices talk to each other actually become a massive bottleneck.
Welcome to this episode of Smart Home News. This is our weekly deep dive where we take the latest developments in smart home platforms, devices, and protocols and figure out what they actually mean for your connected life.
Exactly. We want to cut through the noise.
So our mission today revolves around a single industry-wide theme: adaptability and constraints. We have 3 distinct sources to unpack this week.
It's a busy week.
It really is. First, we've got a hardware release covered by The Verge detailing Ring's new strategy for restrictive apartment doors.
That's a big one.
Second, there's a highly strategic ecosystem manifesto from the Z-Wave Alliance regarding the underlying network plumbing. And third, we'll look at the newly released first half 2026 report from the Thread Group, which kind of shows us how the broader protocol wars are evolving right now.
What really stands out across all these updates, is the intense focus on multi-dwelling units.
So what the industry calls MDUs, right?
Right, MDUs. Hardware manufacturers and protocol alliances are finally realizing that if the smart home is going to survive, it has to move beyond the single-family suburban house.
It has to.
It has to adapt to dense apartment buildings, commercial spaces, and, environments where you cannot just drill holes in the wall or blanket the area in perfect Wi-Fi.
So let's start with those physical constraints. Like right at the front door, we've got this hardware release from Ring, the new Ring Peephole Cam 2K.
Yeah, The Verge covered this pretty heavily.
Yeah, they did. It's available for pre-order right now at $99.99, shipping later this month, and they are replacing their older 2019 Door View Cam.
Which was definitely due for an update.
Oh, for sure. But the fascinating part about this release isn't necessarily the camera lens itself. It's the physical barrier it removes.
Yeah, you are really looking at a pure ecosystem acquisition play here. For years, the smart home industry has essentially just locked out renters.
Just totally ignored them.
Pretty much. If you live in an apartment, your landlord is not going to allow you to drill into the exterior stucco to mount a doorbell.
Good luck with that.
Exactly. And they certainly aren't going to let you run low-voltage wiring through the door frame.
So renters just have to rely on a standard glass peephole.
Right, which leaves a massive demographic entirely outside of the connected home ecosystem. Ring's design here is, honestly, it's incredibly pragmatic.
How does the installation actually work?
You literally just unscrew the existing glass peephole. The camera divides into 2 halves, an exterior lens and an interior battery pack, and they connect directly through that existing hole.
Wow.
Yeah, so no drilling, no wiring, no permanent modifications whatsoever.
So you move into a rental, you slot this in, and suddenly you are just inside the Amazon Ring ecosystem.
Completely.
You're downloading their app, you are setting up motion zones, and let's be real, you are highly likely to sign up for their monthly cloud storage subscription.
That's the real business model right there.
Right. And then 2 years later, when you buy a house or move to a larger space, you take the hardware with you. It acts as the ultimate gateway drug to their broader security ecosystem.
The easier the installation, the wider the net they cast. Bringing this kind of broader access to apartment dwellers is smart, but the hardware itself still has to perform in that environment, which brings up an interesting technical challenge with this specific model.
And that's actually where I want to push back on the spec sheet for a second.
Okay, let's hear it.
The big headline feature Ring is pushing is the resolution bump from 1080p to 2K.
Yeah.
But let's think about how a normal person actually uses a video doorbell. Somebody rings the bell, you get a push notification, and you open a live feed on your smartphone.
Right, usually while you're out and about.
Exactly. You are probably standing in line at the grocery store looking at a heavily compressed video on a 6-inch screen over a spotty cellular connection. Is 2K resolution actually delivering a better experience in that moment, or is this just like a marketing number to justify a new product cycle?
That's a great point. It might actually deliver a worse live experience if we look at the mechanics of video compression.
Wait, really? Worse?
Yeah, because pushing more pixels requires significantly more bandwidth. When the camera captures a 2K feed, the internal processor has to compress that massive file on the fly.
Oh, I see.
Then it has to send it over your apartment's Wi-Fi, which is likely already fighting interference from all your neighbors' routers, up to Amazon's cloud servers, and then back down to your phone's cellular connection.
And if any link in that chain is weak, the video stutters.
Or you experience severe latency. I mean, by the time the two-way audio connects, the delivery driver has already walked away.
We've all been there.
So for live viewing on cellular data, 1080p is often far more reliable just because the data packets are smaller.
Makes sense.
However, where that 2K resolution actually becomes critical is in the recorded events.
Oh, right. When you go back later to figure out who took your package.
That is the crucial distinction. A 2K sensor has millions more pixels than a 1080p sensor. So if you are reviewing footage of a theft in your apartment hallway, you want to be able to pinch and digitally zoom in on the video.
And if you do that on a 1080p sensor...
the image instantly turns into pixelated mush.
Yeah.
The extra pixel density of a 2K sensor gives you the actual data required to resolve a facial detail or like read a logo on a jacket after the fact.
But getting that high-resolution file to the cloud still demands a rock-solid network connection, which honestly highlights a much broader struggle for anyone living in a dense building, Finding hardware that actually plays nicely with your specific physical and network constraints.
It's incredibly frustrating for people just starting out.
It is. And if you're trying to figure out which devices actually fit your setup, smarthomecompared.com can help you compare smart home products by ecosystem, features, compatibility, and integrations before you buy.
Because nobody wants to drop $100 on a camera only to find out it won't talk to the rest of their apartment.
Exactly. You have to do the research first.
And that localized network constraint, that's actually the perfect bridge to the second major development this week.
Let's get into it.
If Ring's goal is to put a smart camera on every single door in an apartment building, well, the building manager might want to connect smart locks, thermostats, and leak sensors in all 300 units.
And you cannot run 300 apartments worth of smart home devices on Wi-Fi without the network just completely collapsing.
You'd need a miracle.
Which brings us to the underlying plumbing of the smart home city. This week, the Z-Wave Alliance dropped a major manifesto addressing their infrastructure, and they went out of their way to confront what they're calling the proprietary myth.
Yes, this is a very persistent misconception of the industry. Because Zigbee and Thread are often heavily marketed as open standards, there's this lingering belief that Z-Wave is a closed proprietary system controlled by one company just hoarding the technology.
But the Alliance's release this week completely dismantles that.
Completely.
Z-Wave operates as an SDO, a standards development organization. It is entirely member-driven. But the piece of this manifesto that really caught my eye was about the actual silicon.
The physical microchips.
Right, the physical microchips inside your smart switches and motion sensors. The Alliance is highlighting that their silicon and software development kits are now supplied by 3 entirely separate providers: Silicon Labs, Trident IoT, and Semtech.
And if we break down the mechanics of global manufacturing, having 3 distinct foundries producing your chips is a massive competitive advantage.
Just look back at the global chip shortage a few years ago.
Right. You couldn't buy a car, and you certainly couldn't find a smart dimmer switch in stock anywhere.
It was a nightmare.
Because if an ecosystem relies entirely on a single silicon manufacturer, a single supply chain disruption brings the entire industry to a halt.
Yeah, everything just stops.
By certifying Silicon Labs, Trident IoT, and Semtech, the Z-Wave Alliance is basically engineering supply chain resilience. If one provider experiences a manufacturing bottleneck, the other 2 can scale up production.
Which is huge for long-term viability.
Exactly. Furthermore, these 3 companies are now actively competing for the business of smart home device manufacturers.
Which forces them to innovate. I mean, they have to figure out how to make their chips process data faster, consume less battery power, and basically cost less money.
Ultimately driving down the retail cost for the consumer while still maintaining strict interoperability.
That's the key part.
Right. The Alliance guarantees that a door sensor utilizing a Trident IoT chip will communicate flawlessly with a smart hub running a Silicon Labs chip.
Now, I was reading through the Alliance's explanation of why their network is so reliable in the first place, and a huge part of it comes down to the frequency they use.
The sub-GHz frequency.
Yeah. Z-Wave operates on sub-GHz frequencies, usually around 908 megahertz here in North America. And to wrap my head around this, I kept picturing like a cocktail party.
Oh, I like this. Break down the analogy. How does the cocktail party explain radio frequencies?
Well, think of the 2.4 gigahertz band as a crowded, really noisy cocktail party packed into a tiny room.
Okay.
That 2.4 band is where your Wi-Fi router, your Bluetooth headphones, your baby monitor, your microwave, and your Zigbee devices all live.
It's chaos in there.
Everyone is in that same room just shouting over each other to be heard. Your Wi-Fi router is screaming to stream a 4K movie while your tiny little smart bulb is trying to whisper a status update to your hub. It is pure congestion.
The technical term for that is airtime contention.
Right.
The data packets are literally colliding in the air, getting corrupted, and forcing the devices to retransmit the data over and over again.
Which creates lag.
Tons of lag.
But then you look at Z-Wave operating down at 908 megahertz. In my head, that's like a quiet VIP lounge down the hall.
Nice.
Wi-Fi and Bluetooth aren't allowed in. So when a Z-Wave leak sensor needs to tell the hub that your washing machine is flooding, it doesn't have to shout over the microwave.
Right.
It just speaks at a normal volume, and the hub hears it instantly on the first try.
It's a great analogy. And the physics of that lower frequency actually add another layer of reliability, too.
How so?
Radio waves at 908 megahertz have a longer wavelength than 2.4 gigahertz waves. A longer wavelength can physically pass through dense obstacles, like the concrete floors, brick walls, and steel framing of an apartment building, without scattering or losing signal strength as quickly.
So it literally punches through walls better than Wi-Fi.
Dramatically better. Which is how Z-Wave has managed to deploy over 300 million devices globally while keeping that, rock-solid reputation for reliability.
Okay, so if we have a resilient supply chain with multiple chip makers and we have a VIP frequency that cuts through concrete walls, the next logical step is figuring out how far we can push that signal.
Pushing it to the absolute limit.
Exactly. And that is the third major piece of our deep dive today. Because both the Z-Wave Alliance and the Thread Group released updates this week, focused entirely on massive scale.
Yeah, the Z-Wave Alliance focused heavily on Z-Wave Long Range, or ZWLR. And this represents a fundamental architectural shift.
So they completely abandoned the original architecture.
Well, traditional Z-Wave operates as a mesh network.
Meaning a smart plug in the living room acts as a repeater, bouncing the signal to the smart lock on the front door. The devices talk to each other to reach the hub.
Yes, and that is fantastic for a single-family home. But Z-Wave Long Range abandons the mesh entirely. Instead, it uses a star topology. Devices communicate directly to the central hub over massive distances, up to a mile in open air.
A mile? That's wild.
It is explicitly designed for commercial buildings, massive hotels, and multi-acre agricultural setups. It supports up to 4,000 devices on a single network.
Okay, let me stop you there, because changing the architecture like that sounds dangerous.
Really? How so?
The whole selling point of a mesh network is that there is no single point of failure. If Z-Wave Long Range switches to a star topology where thousands of endpoints talk directly to one hub, doesn't that make the network incredibly fragile?
I see what you're saying.
Like if the hub goes down or a sensor can't reach the hub directly, the whole system breaks. Why abandon the mesh?
Because at commercial scale, a mesh network actually becomes a massive liability.
Really?
Yeah, let's look at how a mesh recalculates. If a repeater node in a huge mesh goes offline, the network has to heal itself. The surrounding devices send out discovery packets, essentially asking, hey, who can hear me? They wait for responses, they update their routing tables, and establish new paths to the hub.
Sure, but in a house with like 40 devices, that probably takes milliseconds.
Exactly. But in a hotel with 4,000 devices, that recalculation floods the airwaves with unnecessary traffic.
Oh, I hadn't thought of that.
Even worse, battery-powered sensors are suddenly forced to wake up, burn their battery life listening for routing requests, and try to pass along traffic they were never meant to handle.
So the whole thing just grinds to a halt.
The network bogs down, and batteries die in weeks instead of years.
Ah. So at a certain size, the self-healing feature of a mesh actually chokes the network to death.
Exactly the problem. A star topology solves this. The hub does all the heavy computational lifting. The end devices just wake up, fire their data directly to the hub, and go immediately back to sleep.
That makes a lot of sense.
This preserves battery life and completely eliminates routing congestion. And what makes the Z-Wave Alliance's approach so powerful here is that long range operates concurrently with traditional mesh on the exact same silicon chip.
Wait, so they run at the same time?
Yep. An installer can use traditional mesh for the dense indoor rooms and then assign the perimeter security sensors to long range, all talking to the exact same central hub.
That dual architecture approach is fascinating, especially when we compare it to what the Thread Group released this week in their first half 2026 report.
Yeah, their approach is completely different.
Because Thread is tackling the exact same problem commercial scale, but with a totally different philosophy.
Well, remember that Thread is the networking protocol that serves as the backbone for Matter. And unlike Z-Wave's sub-GHz frequency, Thread actually operates in that crowded 2.4 gigahertz band we talked about.
A loud cocktail party.
Right. And it remains fiercely committed to a mesh topology.
So how do they plan to prevent their mesh from choking to death in a massive building if they keep the mesh?
By relying heavily on IP-based routing and border routers. Because Thread uses the same fundamental language as the Internet Protocol, it can integrate seamlessly into a building's existing enterprise IT infrastructure.
Oh, okay.
So instead of one central hub trying to manage a massive mesh, Thread relies on multiple border routers scattered throughout a building.
I see.
These routers act as heavily fortified bridges, basically taking the local mesh traffic and dumping it onto the building's high-speed wired or Wi-Fi backbone.
It's essentially breaking the massive mesh down into smaller, highly localized meshes that all share a massive data highway.
It is a totally different engineering philosophy.
Right.
Z-Wave bypasses the congestion by using a quiet frequency and direct-to-hub communication.
While Thread leans into the congestion by building thicker, faster bridges to the existing IT network.
Exactly. And both are just racing to become the default standard for the commercial smart home market right now.
Which means the technology powering your living room is being heavily fortified by the demands of commercial enterprise. I mean, when these protocols are forced to engineer solutions for a 40-story office building, the silicon inside our everyday home devices gets more reliable, the security gets tighter, and the ecosystems become far more durable.
It really just shows the smart home is graduating from a hobbyist niche into critical infrastructure.
It truly is. So, to summarize what we've learned this week, on the physical front, hardware companies like Ring are focused on tearing down installation barriers.
Getting devices into more hands.
Right. They are designing products that adapt to restrictive environments like an apartment peephole to bring millions of previously locked out renters into their ecosystem.
Making things available to more people, yeah. And on the infrastructure side, alliances like Z-Wave and Thread are entirely focused on expanding the plumbing.
Preparing for that massive scale.
Exactly. Through diversified silicon supply chains and new architectures like Z-Wave long range and Thread border routers, they are ensuring the network won't just collapse when those millions of new devices come online.
It is an incredible study in adaptability. But it does leave me with a final, slightly uncomfortable thought to mull over this week.
Uh-oh. Let's hear it.
As our individual smart home protocols scale up to handle these massive apartment complexes and commercial buildings, the boundaries are going to blur.
That's true.
If the plumbing connects your apartment's doorbell directly to the building manager's central network hub, at what point does your localized smart home just become a node in a much larger smart neighborhood?
Oh, wow.
Like, where exactly does your personal data end and the building's infrastructure data begin? It is something we are going to have to reckon with as these ecosystems continue to expand their reach.
Defining that data boundary is going to be the most critical privacy challenge in the next 5 years, honestly.
Without a doubt. Well, that brings us to the end of our deep dive today.
It was a good one.
If you found this week's report useful in helping you navigate the smart home landscape and understand the forces shaping your connected devices, we'd really appreciate it if you could rate the podcast and leave a comment on Spotify or Apple Podcasts.
It really helps other people discover the show.
Yes, it does. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Smart Home News, and we will see you next time.